In the fall of 1888, Jack the Ripper stalked these streets. In just 10 weeks, he butchered at least 5 prostitutes.
You think about Jack the Ripper as a killer. He took murder to a new level, unprecedented. He became the benchmark for serial killers, the name that everyone remembers, the stuff of nightmares even today.
Ed wants to get into Jack's head and walk in his footsteps. The first crime scene. Durward Street, August 31st, 1888. Jack slashes the throat of prostitute Polly Nichols and cuts into her body.
This is how Jack the Ripper did it. He'd stalk his victims from behind, grab them, expose the throat, cut them twice, left to right. 1, 2. Took a couple of seconds.
8 days later, the second murder. Streetwalker Annie Chapman has her throat cut, but the brutality is escalating. She's found slashed wide open. The crime scene, Hanbury Street.
Back then, it was a place full of courtyards, back alleys, dark. A great place to evade being detected, much like places I've worked with back alleys like Baltimore. Criminals use local knowledge to get away with their crimes. It's exactly what Jack the Ripper did.
Jack's victims knew the maze-like streets. Ironically, it led them straight to their deaths.
Prostitutes, even today, by nature of what they do, they take their clients to very dark, hidden places to do their work. So basically, the prostitutes did the work for him. They actually took him to the best place for him to kill them.
But London is a busy city, with people on the street 24 hours a day. Is it really possible no one ever saw Jack? Why are there no witnesses? To find out how Jack got away with it, Ed visits an old London dungeon to see what conditions were like in 1888.
London in those days, much like this location, very, very dark. No ambient light, no store windows, things like that. And you couple that with the fact that people used very low-quality coal to heat their homes and pumped out tons and tons of thick black smoke, essentially putting a black curtain over the city. Let me show you something amazing. Watch this. You can't see me. I'm killing her right now. This is what Jack the Ripper did. This is how easy it was. He's what I call an organized killer. He took advantage of the conditions of the time. Brilliant and very easy.
Next, prostitute Elizabeth Stride has her throat slashed. But this time, something's different.
Yeah, Liz Stride isn't cut open. It's like he was interrupted.
Jack flees the scene. 30 minutes later, a mile away, he goes on the hunt for victim number 4. But how does he get that far, covered in blood, without attracting attention? Smithfield Meat Market is typical of London's Victorian streets. Butchers are everywhere.
This place is full of guys with bloody aprons. They go to pubs, they go to restaurants, no one bats an eyelid. You could see easily why Jack the Ripper could do the same thing in Whitechapel and not raise much suspicion.
Jack's getting bolder. The original autopsy photos show the horrific violence to 4th victim, Catherine Eddowes. Jack ripped her right open and took a kidney. Just days later, a chilling letter is delivered to the police, addressed "From Hell." With it, a human kidney infected with the same rare disease diagnosed in Catherine Eddowes.
Sir, I sent you half the kidney I took from one woman. Preserved it for you. The other half I fried and ate. Very nice. Next, I may send you the bloody knife I used. If you only wait. Catch me when you can.
The kidney is long gone. But to Ed, the From Hell letter is itself a vital clue to the Ripper.
This little stroke is a temper tick. There is the capacity to explode.
Sheila Kurtz is a forensic handwriting analyst who helped in the Son of Sam case.
these buckles on the K's and these big K's is someone who has a lot of defiance. And now, this is interesting. You see this stroke over here? It's called the breakaway stroke. And that's taking the initiative. So he can take the initiative. If something comes up, he sees the opportunity, he can do it. There are such serious problems in here that I don't think I'd want to be in his company.
No. You wouldn't be eating kidney with him.
No. There's such confusion here. And there's something so wrong that it would affect him mentally. So it probably is from hell.
The nightmare grows with every murder. With Mary Kelly, his fifth victim, Jack the Ripper will perfect his signature method of killing. Mary Kelly's remains are brought to this church, St. Leonard's, for autopsy. Unlike previous victims, she was killed in her own bed. Away from the streets, Jack has reached a new level of depravity.
The whole of the surface of the abdomen and the thighs were removed, and the abdominal cavity emptied of its viscera. The tissues of the neck were severed all the way down to the bone. The uterus and kidneys in one breast was under the head. The other breast by the right foot. The liver between the feet and the intestines by the right side. And the spleen by the left side of the body. The pericardium was open and the heart absent. Makes me sick. It's just gruesome. He just absolutely destroyed this woman. Worse than I've seen an animal butchered. He's a sick puppy. He's a sick man and does terrible things to people.
10 weeks of madness. A gory grand finale. Then the notorious killer vanishes. 3 years later, another prostitute is mutilated in her bed. Only this time, it's in New York.
It doesn't make sense that a guy like Jack the Ripper would just stop. I think he got scared, and I think he took off. And based on what I'm seeing, I think he could have easily picked up in New York right where he left off in London.
August 7, 1891. New York's Lower East Side. Another prostitute is savagely murdered, pulled from the East River, unidentified, mutilated, just like Carrie Brown.
This particular case is of obvious interest because it's in the same city where Carrie Brown was murdered.
Ed Norris thinks that both these New York murders may be the work of London's Jack the Ripper and a vital clue to his identity. Ed is determined to catch the killer.
Let me put it this way. If someone in your family was a victim of crime, your wife, your mother, your daughter, you'd want me to have the case.
For more than a century, amateur detectives have put forward names for Jack the Ripper. Ed is the first cold case detective to go through the list with a professional eye.
Some of them are ridiculous. I mean, Oscar Wilde's in there, Lewis Carroll, people like that. I mean, they're just absurd.
London historian Richard Jones has spent more than 2 decades studying the Ripper case and investigating the main suspects.
So realistically, how many suspects are there?
I think you could probably break it down to under 10 viable suspects, people who well could have been Jack the Ripper.
So of these likely suspects, how many could have ended up in the United States?
Well, several we do know definitely went to the US, one of them being Severin Klosowski.
First up, Severin Klosowski, a Whitechapel barber who murders his 3 wives. He's in New York when Carrie Brown is killed.
We've got Dr. Tumblety, who's a very distinctive American who most certainly went to America.
Francis Tumblety, an American arrested on suspicion of the London murders. He jumps bail and heads for New York.
And finally, there's James Kelly. He's sent to Broadmoor, escapes from Broadmoor, and thereafter becomes something of a mystery.
James Kelly, a convicted killer, escapes from the Broadmoor lunatic asylum outside London just before the Ripper killings. Ed's now got 3 suspects. And Britain's National Archives might give him the hard evidence he